Captain Jake Morrison's hands shook as he stared at the control panel. The red lights blinked faster and faster until they all went dark. Their defense system was dead. 3,000 people lived on New Kepler Station, and now they had nothing to protect them. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. He had been running this mining colony for 8 years. Good years. Peaceful years. The miners dug up rare crystals. The scientists studied new plants. And families lived quiet lives, far from the crowded cities of other worlds. But peace never lasted long in this part of space. "Lisa, send that distress call again," Jake said. To his communications officer, Lisa Chen had worked with him since the colony started. She was the best at her job, but even she looked scared now. Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her keyboard, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. "Captain, but we're 47 light-years from the nearest military base. Even if someone hears us... She didn't need to finish. Help would take weeks to arrive. The Vorthok fleet would be done with them in hours. Dr. Mike Rodriguez walked into the command center. His white lab coat was dirty from running through the colony's underground tunnels. Mike had been checking the emergency shelters, making sure families could hide if the aliens landed. "How many ships?" Mike asked, looking at the main screen. Jake counted the dark shapes moving toward them. 12, maybe 15. All of them bigger than anything we've ever seen. Mike shook his head. His face was grim. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Vorthok Empire. They showed up at small colonies like New Kepler, took everything valuable, and either killed everyone or made them slaves. Sometimes both. "Nobody's coming to help us, Jake," Mike said quietly. "We're too far from civilization. The big governments don't care about little mining colonies. And everyone knows what happens when the Vorthok decide they want your world." Through the station's big windows, they could see the alien ships getting closer. The ships looked like giant metal insects, with glowing red eyes. Their weapon ports were already starting to glow, ready to shoot. Jake thought about his own family. His wife Beth worked in the colony's school. His 2 kids, Tommy and Amy, were probably hiding in their classroom right now, wondering why the sirens were going off. "Keep sending that signal, Lisa," Jake said. His voice was steady, but inside, he felt hopeless. Someone might hear us. Lisa nodded and kept working. She sent the same message over and over. "This is New Kepler Station. We are under attack by Vorthok forces. 3,000 civilians need immediate assistance. Anyone who receives this message, please help us." The signal traveled out into space at the speed of light. It passed by empty star systems and dead planets. It went through areas where no one lived for hundreds of light years. Most people who might hear it would just shake their heads sadly. Another colony was about to disappear, but Lisa's desperate message traveled farther than anyone thought possible. It kept going through the dark void of space, past the edge of known civilization, toward a small blue and green planet that most of the galaxy had forgotten about. Earth looked peaceful from space. White clouds swirled over blue oceans. Green forests covered the land. Cities twinkled with lights at night. To most aliens, it seemed like a quiet world full of simple people who had never learned to travel between the stars. They were wrong. Deep, beneath the Pacific Ocean, something that had been sleeping for 300 years began to wake up. Ancient machines, bigger than mountains, started to move. Computer systems older than most alien civilizations began to run programs that had waited centuries for this moment. The signal from New Kepler Station had reached Earth, and Earth was about to remember why the galaxy had once feared humanity above all other species. In the dark depths of the ocean, massive metal eyes began to glow. Something was stirring, something powerful, something that had been waiting for exactly this kind of call for help. The Vorthok had made a terrible mistake. They were about to attack humans, and that was something Earth could never allow. Admiral Tom Bradley should have been dust by now. 300 years ago, he had been flesh and blood, commanding Earth's greatest warships among the stars. But when humanity chose to withdraw from the galaxy, Tom made a different choice. He merged his mind with something far more powerful than any human body could ever be. Now, Tom existed as pure consciousness inside Prometheus, a war machine the size of a small city buried beneath the Pacific Ocean. His thoughts moved through networks of crystal and metal that stretched for miles. His memories were stored in quantum computers that could calculate the movement of entire solar systems. He was still human, but he was also something much more. The distress signal from New Kepler Station reached Earth's hidden monitoring stations like a scream in the darkness. Instantly, systems that had been sleeping for centuries began to wake up, deep underground, in secret facilities that no living human knew about. Ancient protocols started running. Tom felt the signal hit his consciousness like a physical blow. Images flooded his mind, families running for shelter, children crying, brave colonists preparing to die, defending their homes. His anger burned, cold and pure. Analysis complete, came the voice of General Patricia Hayes. Like Tom, Patricia had been dead for 300 years. Like Tom, her consciousness lived on inside a Titan, her massive war machine. Atlas was buried beneath the frozen mountains of Alaska. Patricia's awareness stretched across neural networks that covered thousands of square miles. She could see, through sensors hidden all over Earth. She could hear radio signals from across the galaxy. Right now, she was focused on one thing: the threat to human colonists 47 light-years away. Human colonists under immediate threat, Patricia reported, her voice echoing through quantum communication channels. Distance, 47 light-years. Enemy force, Vorthok subjugation fleet. Estimated colony population, 3,000 civilians. From Antarctica came another voice, colder than the ice above. Colonel Danny Foster had merged with Cerberus, the most dangerous of the three Titans. Where Tom was strategic and Patricia was analytical, Danny was pure military fury, held in check by iron discipline. Rules of engagement? Danny asked. His consciousness pulsed with barely controlled rage. In life, Danny had lost his own family to alien raiders. In death, he had sworn that no human would ever suffer the same fate. While he still existed, Tom considered for exactly 0.003 seconds. The Terran Accords were clear. Humanity had written these laws before withdrawing from galactic politics. Every human who lived among the stars was considered Earth's responsibility. Any threat to them activated the most serious response protocols. The Terran Accords are clear, Tom replied, his massive form beginning to move for the first time in decades. Any threat to humanity's children activates Directive 0. Prepare for immediate deployment. Directive 0. The words sent shivers through all three consciousness networks. It was the protocol that Earth hoped never to use. Total war. No mercy. No prisoners. Complete annihilation of any force that threatened human lives. Deep beneath the Pacific, Prometheus began to rise. Water pressure that would crush submarines like tin cans meant nothing to the Titan's hull. Tom felt his massive body responding to his will. Weapon systems that could crack planets powered up for the first time in 3 centuries. Manufacturing. Bays prepared to build tools of war that the galaxy had forgotten could exist. In Alaska, Patricia felt Atlas stirring beneath miles of rock and ice. Her Titan specialized in long-range devastation. She could reach out across light years and touch enemy fleets with weapons that bent the laws of physics. In Antarctica, Danny's rage finally found an outlet. Cerberus was the infiltrator, the ghost, that could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Danny's specialty was getting close to enemies and making them regret every choice they had ever made. On Earth's surface, nothing seemed to change. Birds still sang in the trees. People went to work in their cities. Children played in parks. The blue skies remained peaceful and calm, but beneath the surface, 3 war machines the size of cities were waking up. Humanity had chosen peace 300 years ago. They had withdrawn from the galaxy to let other species find their own way. That peace was about to end. The Vorthok were about to learn why humanity had once ruled a quarter of the galaxy. They were about to discover why other alien races still whispered frightened stories about the humans, who could appear from nowhere and destroy entire fleets. Most importantly, they were about to understand that some sleeping giants should never be awakened. Jenny Walsh was having a normal Tuesday morning at the Galactic Defense Network monitoring station. She sipped her coffee and watched the usual traffic of cargo ships and passenger vessels moving between star systems. Space was busy, but predictable. Ships followed known routes at speeds that made sense according to physics. Then her computer screens went crazy. "What the hell?" Jenny muttered, setting down her coffee cup so fast it nearly spilled. Energy readings unlike anything she had ever seen flooded her displays. 3 massive objects had just appeared on her sensors, moving impossibly fast. Jenny had been monitoring deep space communications for 15 years. She had seen every type of ship the galaxy had to offer. Fast courier vessels, massive cargo, haulers, even military dreadnoughts that could crack moons. But nothing like this. The 3 objects were huge. Each one registered as large as a small moon, but they were moving at speeds that broke every rule of faster-than-light travel that Jenny knew. Her instruments kept recalculating, unable to believe their own readings. "Director Thompson," Jenny shouted across the monitoring station, "you need to see this right now." Robert Thompson had been Jenny's supervisor for 8 years. He was calm, methodical, and never got excited about anything. Jenny had never heard him raise his voice. Even during the Centauri crisis 3 years ago, when half the sector thought war was coming, Robert walked over to Jenny's station, expecting to see another false alarm, maybe a sensor glitch or a computer error. Instead, his face went pale as he stared at her screens. 3 massive contacts just left the Sol system, Jenny reported, her voice shaking slightly. "And sir, they're moving faster than anything in our databases. I've never seen energy signatures like this." Robert leaned over Jenny's shoulder, studying the impossible readings. Sol system meant Earth, but Earth was supposed to be a quiet backwater, planet full of simple farmers and basic technology. They barely had space travel, according to most galactic records. "Run a full diagnostic on all sensors," Robert ordered. "This has to be a malfunction." But the diagnostics came back clean. The sensors were working perfectly. Whatever had left Earth was real, and it was moving toward the edge of known space at speeds that should have been impossible. Meanwhile, 47 light-years away, Vorthok Fleet Commander Zektar was preparing for an easy victory. His 12 warships surrounded New Kepler Station, like predators circling wounded prey. The human colonists had stopped broadcasting their pathetic distress calls. They were probably hiding in their shelters, waiting for the end Zektar's intelligence. Officer brought him a report that made him laugh out loud. 3 objects approaching from the Sol system. Zektar read the report with amusement. "Primitive vessels from the human homeworld. Let them come. We'll add their wreckage to our victory." Display. The Vorthok had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had crushed alien fleets 10 times larger than 3 ships. What could primitive humans possibly do against the might of the Vorthok Empire? Zektar ordered his fleet to continue preparing for the colony assault. A few human ships would provide entertainment for his crew after they finished with the mining station. But the 3 objects racing through space toward New Kepler were not ordinary ships. Deep inside Prometheus, the consciousness that had once been Admiral Kelly Martinez, felt a cold satisfaction as Earth fell behind them. Kelly had commanded human fleets during the last Great War 3 centuries ago. She had watched alien raiders destroy human colonies, kill human families, enslave human children. She had died fighting to protect humanity's scattered children across the galaxy. Now, merged with the war machine Prometheus, She was stronger than any fleet commander who had ever lived. ETA to New Kepler. Kelly asked her sister consciousnesses through quantum communication channels. 17 hours, came the synchronized reply from Tom Bradley in Prometheus, Patricia Hayes in Atlas, and Danny Foster in Cerberus. 17 hours. Kelly had waited 300 years for this moment. She could wait 17 more hours. The three titans moved through space like hunting sharks, their massive hulls cutting through dimensions that normal physics said didn't exist. They used technology that humanity had developed during their golden age. Before they chose isolation and peace, each titan was equipped with weapons that could reshape matter at the atomic level. They carried manufacturing systems that could build entire fleets from space dust. Their armor could withstand the explosion of stars. Most importantly, they carried the burning fury of humanity's greatest military minds, preserved forever in crystalline networks that never forgot and never forgave. The Vorthok were about to learn why humanity had once ruled the stars. They were about to discover that some species chose peace, not from weakness, but from mercy, and they were about to understand that mercy, once exhausted, could turn into something far more terrible than any weapon the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Jake Morrison had given up hope. The Vorthok fleet surrounded New Kepler station like vultures around dying prey. Their weapons were charging up, ready to turn his colony into burning wreckage. Jake sat in his command chair, thinking about his wife and children hiding in the emergency shelters below. Then space itself seemed to tear open. Three shapes materialized out of nowhere, so massive that Jake's mind struggled to understand what he was seeing. Each one was bigger than the entire Vorthok fleet combined. Their hulls gleamed with energy patterns that made his instruments go crazy, alarms screaming warnings about power levels that shouldn't exist. "What are those things?" Lisa Chen whispered from her communications station. Her voice was filled with awe and terror. Dr. Mike Rodriguez stared at his scanner readings in disbelief. "The energy signatures, they're off the charts. I've never seen anything like this." Jake found his voice and opened a communication channel. His hands shook as he pressed the transmission button. "Unknown vessels. This is Captain Morrison of New Kepler Station. Identify yourselves." The response came immediately, transmitted on frequencies that somehow cut through all the Vorthok jamming like it didn't exist. The voice was female.com and spoke perfect English with an accent Jake recognized as Old Earth military. "This is Admiral Martinez Terran War Titan Prometheus. All human personnel take immediate shelter, weapons free in 60 seconds. Jake's blood ran cold. Terran meant Earth. But Earth was supposed to be a quiet farming world with barely any space. Technology. How could they have built ships like these? And what was a war titan? "You heard her?" Jake shouted to his crew. "Emergency protocols now. Get everyone into the deepest shelters and seal the blast doors." Throughout New Kepler Station, families grabbed their children and ran for the underground bunkers. Miners dropped their tools and sprinted for safety. Scientists abandoned their experiments and headed for reinforced shelters that had been built to protect against asteroid impacts. Above them, Commander Zektar was having his own moment of shock. His tactical officer was reporting readings that made no sense. "Sir, those vessels, ... they're larger than battle stations, and their power output is impossible. My instruments can't even calculate their maximum capacity." Zektar had conquered dozens of worlds. He had never backed down from a fight. But something about those three ships made his warrior instincts scream danger. "All vessels evasive maneuvers. Now," he ordered. "Scatter formation. Prepare for that," was when reality bent Admiral Kelly Martinez. Her consciousness flowing through every system aboard Prometheus, felt a cold satisfaction as she released her first wave of weapons. She had waited 3 centuries for this moment. From Prometheus's hull came a swarm of hunter-killers, Small but deadly machines that moved like living things. They weren't just programmed to destroy, they could think, adapt, and learn. As ships fired their energy weapons, the hunter-killers studied the beams, figured out how they worked, and became immune to them in seconds. The alien ships tried to run, but the hunter-killers were faster. They sliced through armor like paper and found the vital systems inside each vessel. Explosions bloomed across the Vorthok fleet as ship after ship died. But that was just the beginning. General Patricia Hayes in Atlas focused on the largest Vorthok cruiser. Her Titan specialized in gravitational manipulation, the ability to control the force that held planets together. Patricia reached out with sensors that could touch gravity itself and grabbed the alien ship. The Vorthok cruiser, massive as a mountain, began to compress. Its crew had just enough time to scream before their ship was crushed into a ball of twisted metal the size of a car. Patricia tossed the wreckage aside like garbage. Colonel Danny Foster in Cerberus chose a different approach. His Titan could phase in and out of normal space, becoming ghost-like when needed. Danny watched 3 Vorthok destroyers cluster together, thinking their shields would protect them. Cerberus simply walked through the shields as if they were made of light. The massive Titan materialized inside the enemy formation and released a pulse of pure energy. The 3 destroyers vanished instantly, turned into scattered atoms. The battle was a massacre disguised as a fight. The Vorthok fleet, which had seemed so powerful when terrorizing defenseless colonists, was revealed as primitive and weak when faced with true military might. Commander Zektar's flagship was the last to die. As hunter-killers swarmed over his hull and gravity weapons crushed his escort ships, he managed to send one final message to Vorthok High Command. The humans, they're not what we thought. They're not primitive. The transmission ended as Zektar's ship exploded into silent fire. 14 minutes. That's how long the battle lasted from first shot to final explosion. In 14 minutes, 12 Vorthok warships were reduced to glowing debris scattered across space. The 3 Titans hung motionless in the void, their weapons powering down. Around New Kepler Station, the colonists slowly emerged from their shelters to stare in wonder at their saviors. Admiral Martinez's voice came over the communication channels again, warm now, instead of cold. New Kepler Station, this is Prometheus. The threat has been eliminated. You are safe. Jake Morrison looked out at the 3 massive ships that had appeared from nowhere to save his people. Earth had sent them. Quiet, peaceful Earth had built weapons that could destroy entire fleets in minutes. Thank you, Jake whispered into his microphone. Thank you for saving us. But the Titans were already preparing to leave, their work here finished. They had a message to deliver to the galaxy. The news traveled faster than the fastest ships in the galaxy. Within hours of the New Kepler incident, every major civilization knew what had happened. 12 Vorthok warships destroyed in 14 minutes. Not defeated, completely annihilated by 3 unknown vessels from Earth. At first, nobody believed it. Earth was a backwater planet. Humans were barely capable of interstellar travel. They farmed, they built simple cities, and they kept to themselves. How could they possibly have weapons powerful enough to destroy an entire Vorthok fleet? But the evidence was undeniable. Sensor recordings from nearby systems showed the battle. 3 massive ships had appeared from nowhere, eliminated the Vorthok threat with impossible efficiency, and vanished just as quickly. The technology they displayed was beyond anything the current galaxy understood. On the planet Nexus Prime, home to the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were called. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the Great Chamber, their voices filled with confusion and growing fear. Ambassador Helen Foster, one of the few humans who worked with the Galactic Council, found herself at the center of attention. Everyone wanted answers about her species. Everyone wanted to know what Earth was hiding. We need to understand what we're dealing with, declared Council Leader Vorthex, his scaled face showing worry. How did primitive humans build ships like that? What else are they hiding? Helen didn't have answers. She had been born on a colony world and had never even visited Earth. Like most humans in the galaxy, she thought of the homeworld as a quiet farming planet where nothing interesting ever happened. But the older species remembered fragments of something. Ancient races, like the Altarians and the Centauri, began searching through their oldest historical archives. Deep in storage vaults that hadn't been opened for centuries, they found references to something called the Terran hegemony. The records were scattered and incomplete. Most had been deliberately destroyed or hidden away. But slowly, a terrifying picture began to emerge. 300 years ago, humans had not been quiet farmers. They had ruled a quarter of the galaxy. The Terran hegemony had been the most powerful civilization the galaxy had ever seen. Their fleets could appear anywhere instantly. Their weapons could crack planets. Their technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. Then, suddenly, they had vanished. Human colonies remained, but Earth itself had withdrawn from galactic politics. The great fleets disappeared. The impossible weapons went silent. Most species assumed humanity had collapsed or destroyed itself in a civil war. They were wrong. The emergency session of the Galactic Council continued for 3 days. Experts shared what little they could find about humanity's forgotten empire. Helen Foster stood before the assembly, reading from a recovered text that had been found in Altarian archives. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke the ancient words. The humans withdrew not from weakness, but from mercy. They chose isolation to spare us from their wrath. Never mistake their silence for inability. Never confuse their patience with weakness. They sleep by choice, not from defeat. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Earth hadn't lost its power, it had voluntarily given up ruling the galaxy. The quiet farmers everyone ignored were actually the descendants of the most fearsome warriors the universe had ever known. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the 3 titans returned to their hidden sanctuaries. Prometheus sank back beneath the Pacific Ocean. Atlas disappeared under the frozen mountains of Alaska. Cerberus vanished into the Antarctic ice. To any casual observer, Earth looked exactly the same. People went to work in their cities. Children played in parks. Farmers tended their crops. Nothing seemed to have changed. But before Admiral Kelly Martinez resumed her centuries-long slumber, she had one final task. From deep beneath the ocean, Prometheus's communication arrays reached out across the galaxy. The message was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, to every inhabited system. Kelly's voice was calm, but carried the weight of absolute authority. To all who hear this message, humanity's children remain under our protection. They live peacefully among you as miners, researchers, traders, and colonists. They ask for nothing but the right to exist in safety. Touch them at your peril, threaten them, and face our wrath. This is our first warning. There will not be a second. The transmission ended. The galaxy listened in stunned silence. Across hundreds of star systems, species that had never heard of the Terran hegemony began to understand. Earth's silence hadn't been weakness, it had been mercy. Humanity had chosen peace not because they couldn't fight, but because when they fought, nothing survived. The Vorthok Empire, which had terrorized countless worlds, issued an immediate order. No Vorthok vessel was ever to approach a human colony again. Other aggressive species quietly canceled their expansion plans. If they involved systems with human populations, pirates and raiders, who had preyed on isolated human settlements, suddenly found other targets. Slave traders crossed human colonies off their target lists. Military commanders who had ignored human space began treating it as the most dangerous territory in the galaxy. Ambassador Helen Foster returned to her quarters after the council sessions, her mind reeling with everything she had learned about her own species. Earth wasn't just her home world, it was the sleeping guardian of every human in the galaxy. She looked out her window at the stars and wondered how many other civilizations had made the same mistake as the void. How many had seen humanity's peaceful nature and mistaken it for weakness. Now the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity slept by choice, not from defeat. And some sleeping giants, once awakened, could remake the universe itself. The new Kepler incident became a turning point in galactic history. Not because of what happened, but because of what it revealed. Earth had never stopped being the most powerful force in the galaxy. They had simply chosen to let everyone else forget.